Hey everyone, I just wanted to touch base with you very quickly in my post walk in the rain hairdo. Hope you don't mind. Charlie will be joining me any moment because if I'm sitting down, Charlie wants to be on my lap. So here he is. So here he is. Charlie, can you see his little face? Or you only see his butt? There he is. Yeah, he's pretty cute. He's pretty cute. Well, I just wanted to touch base with you. I have a couple asks for you, and then I'm inviting you to ask your asks. My number one ask is to please go over to Animology Podcast. Go to Animology Podcast on iTunes. It's really going to be the best way to do it. Or go to Animology Podcast on Stitcher. But it is very exciting. I am really trying to expand the audience of animology to an audience who may never ever hear about animal issues other than through this podcast because they're interested in language or literature or history and the history of the English language. There's an etymology. So I am looking to increase this audience, and I'm possibly going to work with a network, a podcast network, to do that. And in order to do that, I need my audience to show me that they are on board with the content I'm creating, so that we can justify a new audience being interested in this. So if you haven't already subscribed or listened, I think you're going to be fascinated. It's an amazing content. The content is really compelling and so important and so interesting. So go check out Animology Podcast, but don't just go over and say, oh, okay, I checked it out. You have to subscribe to it. You have to download the episodes, and I'm really urging you to just write a review and leave a rating. That's on iTunes. Number two, I don't know. I guess that's really it. That's all the questions I have for you. Please do that. Number two is, we talked before. I did an earlier video urging people to call the USDA, and I stand by that. I'm also going to do a video tomorrow, and I'm going to do a longer video, but also a short, just kind of 15-second ask video, really encouraging you to write letters to your editor. I touched on it today in the video I did. But I'm really going to urge you to use your voice to reach out to journalists. They are the gatekeepers of our concerns. That's what the media are there for. And they're the ones that keep the pulse of the public. You understand? You are the public, and they need to know what it is that we're concerned about. And of course, right now, so many of us are concerned about so many different things. It's so difficult to take it all in and not know what to respond to. But I'm really urging you to use your voice and just write a simple letter to the editor of your local paper, regional paper, national paper, and just say, hey, I'm an American citizen, I'm a taxpayer, and I am greatly, deeply, gravely concerned that the government has removed information that I have the right to see as a taxpayer. They're hiding this information in the animal welfare records, and we need to get them to put this back on, and thank you for, printing my letter. So I'm urging you to do that. Let's see, Doimong said, loved the Zodiac episode, learned 100 new things. I know, that particular episode, Doimong, was a little overwhelming even for me. I think that Zodiac episode could easily have been broken down into 12 different episodes because each constellation that we cover in the Zodiac episode has its own animal related word, and then from there has its the etymology of that. I mean, to understand that Cancer, the reason why Cancer's symbol is a crab, or why we think of a crab when we think of Cancer and vice versa, it's fascinating stuff. I mean, it goes back to ancient Greek medicine. So, those kinds of things are just absolutely fascinating to me. The fact that beaver, that castor is the Greek word for beaver. A lot of people don't know that castor oil comes from the fact that beaver, this excretion from beavers was used for medicinal purposes. And now, of course, that's it's now gotten by way of a plant, the castor oil plant, but that castor oil plant is named after the fact that the beaver, Greek, castor, Greek for beaver, was where we originally got that, their fluid, basically. So it's just fascinating. Heather says, I enjoyed your interview on the podcast about euphemisms. I had to go watch George Carlin afterwards. Oh, I love it. I love the idea that it draws people to other people who I think are just icons. George Carlin was so amazing. It was such a loss when he died. He was still commenting and making such great, important social commentary. We miss him very much. So I'm glad that inspired you to go check out George Carlin. I just recorded my interview with Carol Adams talking about language around animals and women, feminism and speciesism, and we had a great time. The podcast is over an hour, and it's just rich. Carol and I both share a love of language and obviously social justice and our activism for animals and for other disenfranchised groups. It makes for a very rich and interview, and Carol and I have known each other many years. So, these are all people who are colleagues of mine, fellow activists of all of us sharing in that same arena. And these are just people I adore. I mean, that's what's nice about this, right, is you get to just pick the people who really have something compelling to say, and where animal activism and animals and issues around animals and language converge. I already have the Animals in the Alphabet episode ready to go. It's a little different from the one that I did for Food for Thought. It's just a little polished, but the Food for Thought one was something I'm proud of. And I've got other ones that I'm recording. I also already interviewed Michelle Simon talking about milk and the Dairy Pride Act and such. So I'm glad you enjoyed that, Heather and Dumont. I'm really glad you enjoyed those episodes. And tell me more of your favorites, and I want to hear from you. I'm really looking to engage a conversation and a dialogue around this podcast. And I am working every single second of every day on content that I believe is rich and important. In fact, I am going to the KQED studios on Friday to record a perspective for KQED is our NPR station here, our national public radio station, and I've been contributing to them for I think 12 years now, and you let it slide, I let months go by, but I'm really kind of dedicated to getting a commentary every month. And Mark, my editor over there, is really liking the content that I'm bringing over. So the tragedy episode, I hope you're listening to it. I think it's fascinating. I talked about the fact that this part of your ear, this part right here, is called the tragus, which is named after goats. And you have to listen to the episode to find out why. Of course, tragedy is named from the Greek word for goat, which is tragos, and I talk about the another Greek word for goat that gives us the word aegis, and that gives us the word Aegean Sea, like Aegean, like the Aegean Sea. So it's kind of fascinating stuff, and all of that comes from these animals, which again just continues to convey the fact that we're so connected with animals, even in our language, even in our alphabet. So, that to me is amazing. The tragedy episode I think is really fascinating, but I did make the version for KQED a little different, and I'm excited for it to go live. Rita, no, this is your time. So that's all I have to say. I'd love to get your questions, and I'm just going to keep it short. So we'll do a quick fire. Rita said, so sorry to go off topic, but as an international listener and not an American citizen, what, if anything, is the most effective thing I can do in regards to the USDA website situation? That's a great idea, Rita. That might be a situation where maybe that's not the best use of your time in terms of efficacy, because they're obviously going to pay a lot more credence to someone who lives in the U.S. I think just educating people too. I mean, one thing you can do is perhaps you have followers or friends or family in the U.S. and letting your friends and family know and asking them to spread the word. If I asked my mother, she's not able to really pay attention to things right now, but if I asked, so not everybody knows what's going on, and there's so much stuff that's coming out, and not everyone's listening to the same media channels. So don't underestimate the fact that you might have some people in your community that you can reach. But you can also write, use it as a launching pad whenever things are happening, even in another country. Think about what might be related to where you live. And perhaps it's an opportunity to write a letter to the editor of your paper about a similar issue, or about why it's so important that we have transparency in government. Perhaps there's an issue near you where, the government isn't being transparent about something. Or just think, oh gosh, I've been meaning to write a letter to my paper about this completely different issue, and this has just inspired me to do that. So use it as inspiration for something that would be relevant to where you live, because there's work to do wherever we are. I've said it a number of times, and I'll say it again, that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And with all of the things that are happening right now with this administration, I'm going to say it right now, what the GOP is doing is absolutely despicable, that they're letting this happen. But I also blame the Democrats. We got complacent. We went to sleep. When, the 8 years that Obama was in office should have been a time when we were really mobilizing and getting all of the young people who were excited when Obama was elected, they were already motivated, giving them places to put their energy. And so whatever you think is important where you are, now is the time. When we're winning is not the time. It's like, you can look at the analogy of the drought in California here. I mean, there's obviously layers and layers of the political aspects to water here in California, but we shouldn't wait until we're in a drought to have people conserve water. We shouldn't wait until we're losing or at risk of losing for instance, the presidency, for people to get mobilized. This is what it looks like when people go to sleep and become complacent. And the Republicans stay on message even when they are winning. And we stopped. So even if there's an issue near you that you think, well, we're doing pretty well, and there's this, there is always something that we could be responding to. Now, what I'm trying to do for my audience is to give you something very specific to hold on to and to focus on. Because as I said, there are so many things to be concerned about, but what can we do? What's going to be the most effective way to use our voice? I think one of the things we need to do, of course, is stay strong, take deep breaths, be strategic, have a plan, and focus on one particular thing. The administration, they are made up of human beings who want to keep their seats. That's the only way you need to look at them. And so there are constituents in even the GOP's districts who would be very unhappy to know that animals are already being harmed. I want to make it clear that in all of these places, the USDA records are reflecting all of the animals are being harmed anyway. They're in puppy mills, they're in circuses and zoos and laboratories. The point is, we have a right to see the records that for these places and for these animals. And there are people in these GOP their constituents in their districts who give a crap about that. And so if they think that their constituents are really going to be upset about that, and that could be the tipping point for them, they will put pressure on the people who are making the decisions about the USDA. Don't underestimate that. And that's why I keep saying that compassion for animals is bipartisan. So whoever who is Republican and has a representative in Congress, and of course everybody does, urge them to write to them. Not just, there are all the Democrats who've written letters, the members of Congress, they're all Democrats. There are Republicans who do care about this. I know they do, but they need to hear from their constituents. So we can't stop talking about this issue until it's done. We can't stop tweeting about it and writing letters to the editor, because don't forget, even though you think that you're just talking in an echo chamber, if you're sharing it with your Twitter followers who believe what you believe, they can share it with their people whose mom might go, I'm Republican and I don't like that they're doing this. Or a letter that you write to the editor, there'll be people who read that and go, I didn't know. And that's why I want to make it clear that when we write, we talk about it in a very bipartisan way, because it is bipartisan. This is not a partisan issue. The Republicans have done this. They're the ones who did this. But what's going to move them is hearing from their constituents. Does that make sense? Going back. Michelle says, is your husband vegan? Trying to go vegan, but my husband is not. Yes, I'll get to that in a second. Is there a way to see your old podcast? Oh, Lena, my podcast, my Food for Thought podcast is still live. When you say see, I should say that my podcasts are audio. So Food for Thought is up on iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play and all those places as well. So you can find Food for Thought, and of course you can find Animology. Sorry, it's a little dark in here. This is just this really cozy corner in part of my living room that doesn't have a lot of bright light, so I hope it's okay. You're welcome, Rita. I like what you're doing because it helps me focus. There's so much to do, it's easy to get overwhelmed. Thank you. You're welcome, Katrina. That is my intention. It helps me as well because, believe me, I know the feeling. And one of the things I was talking to my friend tonight, Christy Middleton, whose book is coming out, called Meatless. Her book is coming out next month, like very soon. We go for walks, and we were walking today, and I said, you know, one of the things I have to remember, and we have to remember, is we have to stay strong. And I have to be strong for those who need my voice. If I am constantly flitting around emotionally distraught because of every awful thing we hear from this administration, just even forget even policy. It's not even policy. They're executive orders, but not even, you know, in terms of real changes, but just rhetoric. If I'm constantly responding to that ugliness, I'm getting emotionally exhausted, and I can't do that. So I've been doing a lot of media blackouts. I'll be really honest with you. I am a news junkie. I love reading the New York Times and the Washington Post, and I love listening to KQED. I put it on the second I walk into that kitchen, and I walk into that kitchen pretty frequently to get my breakfast, to get my lunch. I work from home, so I'm always here. And now I'm just putting in podcasts and listening to podcasts that I love, because I have to filter this stuff. It's too painful to constantly listen and take it in. It's too emotionally exhausting. So I'm filtering it. And that's what I'm trying to do for my audience as well, is say, okay, let me just try and swim through all of the muck, because there's a lot of muck, and let me just give you one thing to do and to focus on. And this is why I keep saying, write letters. There's a lot to do around this one issue. You're not just wasting time. You're not just wasting your breath. Call the USDA every day. Call your representatives and your senators every single day. Write letters to the editor. Write on your Facebook. Until this is done, we've got to hammer this home constantly. You know, one of the ways that Trump is able to keep moving his base is because he keeps repeating things over and over and over and over. And what happens, and George Lakoff talks about this, the circuitry, ideas become stronger when they're repeated. And so you keep repeating the same thing over and over again. It keeps building that circuitry in the brain, and then it becomes real. And that's why he's able to just spout these lies and people believe them. Spout your own truth and say the same things over and over again. Animals should be protected. This is our right to see this information, not yours to hide. Public information should remain public. Animals need our voice. Repeat these things again and again and again to infiltrate the minds of everyone who follows you. Even if they agree with you, it's okay, because we're instilling and reinforcing. Charlie's on my lap. Reinforcing these ideas over and over and over again. And that is necessary and valuable. And that literally strengthens those circuits in the brain where that idea lives. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So going through, I'm not going to forget about the vegan husband question if you're still there. Heather asks, what's the easiest way to get the transcript from an older podcast episode? I'm a supporter. Couldn't find it on the mobile. Yeah, not every single one is up there, Heather. So thank you, first of all, for supporting my work. And if you need a particular podcast transcript, just email support@joyfulvegan.com and we'll get it over to you. Emily says, I enjoy your talk so much. I agree with what you're saying. Very well said. Thank you, Emily. Thank you. Lisa says, hello. Will you do a compassionate retreat this year? Hi, Lisa. Oh, you know, I've been getting questions about it. And I have to say, right now, the answer is probably no. However, there's a way we could possibly make it happen, and I'm going to see what I can do. If it happens, it might be closer to November, because I've got travel in July, and I've got travel in October. And that leaves possibly September, but I was thinking, gosh, no, I won't be able to do it. And then I was thinking, there might be an opportunity to do it, because I think doing a compassion retreat this year would be really helpful for people. So to talk about compassionate language again, compassionate speech, God, wouldn't it be amazing to get George Lakoff to come? I bet we could. But also talking about political action for animals. I think, especially since we're forming our PAC, our Political Action Committee, other people who might be interested in forming similar things where they live, it might be a good time to do it. So that's my long way of saying I'm obviously thinking out loud while I'm talking. The answer is I don't know, but I guess if you are all interested, put it that way, if you are all interested in something like this, we did a weekend last year and it was a wonderful weekend. And if you're interested, drop me a line. I think there might be a space for it. And I think, as I said, in this climate, it might be more important than ever. Just from your thumbs up and your hearts, I'm getting the sense that you agree. Millie says, I totally agree. We need to stay focused and vigilant, whether it's animal rights, human rights, environmental protection, or democratic rights, or democratic principles. I'm sure you're saying values. We need to stand together and stand strong and never give up. Thanks so much for all you do. Thank you so much, Millie. Indeed, indeed. And we can care about all of these things at the same time. It's such an opportunity. It's one of the reasons I wrote to my senator today. I've been really, just disappointed. We're probably going to work with her in some way. I'm sure at some point. One of our board members for the PAC is very good friends with Kamala Harris, and I've just been disappointed because she has this survey on her website saying, what issues do you care about? Rank them, and she has a little ranking system. And climate change and women's rights and everything except for animals. And that's not okay. Like, this is part of this conversation of social justice, of the disenfranchised being completely left out of the equation, and it's not okay. So that's another thing we can all do, wherever you live, is making sure that our representatives know that we have issues we care about, and we want them to know that we're voting for them on that. That's why I wrote this political action guide for animal issues. It's on my website. I've been tweeting it out. Share it, look at it, read it, study it, implement the suggestions. It's called the Political Action Guide for Animal Issues. It's about being politically engaged and doing it in a way that's really effective. And you have to remember that your representatives want to be reelected. That's all they care about. And if they know that your issue is animal issues and all these, of course we can care about more than one issue, of course, at a time. But if they know that, they're going to pay attention, especially if you're voting for people based on their record around animal issues, and then you're saying, sorry, not going to vote for you because of the lack of animal support that you showed. This stuff is really real. It's real. It's about being engaged politically, and it's really exciting. I think it's really exciting, and I think it's really necessary on a local level. This is where it starts. This is where it takes place on a state level, and then of course we're seeing what happens federally. Katrina, thank you. That's so frightening but fascinating and powerful. What was frightening but fascinating and powerful? I don't remember what I said. Probably. But I agree. whatever it was. Kirsten, hello. So happy to see you. Hi, Kirsten. Okay, Lisa's interested, and this year especially, it's on your site. Found it. Good, Katrina, thank you. Yeah, actually, could someone please, right now in the comments, add the link for the political action guide? I will tell you this right now. Just type this in. Everybody right now, type this in. www.ColleenPatrick-Goudreau. That'll take a second, because it's long. Okay, .com/NRA. Now, I know some people don't like the comparison to the NRA. Too bad, because it's naive and misguided to think that just because there's an ideology of another organization that we don't agree with, that we shouldn't take any pages from their playbook. It's naive. And I'm not saying go and do things that are unethical or immoral or dishonest or illegal. That's not what the NRA does. The NRA completely uses the system. Well, not completely. There's a lot of things they do as well. But I mean, in terms of money and lobbying, and they have the power to do it. But one of the reasons they have the influence they have, considering the fact that very few people percentage-wise actually hunt, a very small percentage of the American public actually hunts, the reason they are so successful is because they are single issue focused. And that is a page out of the playbook that we need to understand. Now, this is not original at all. Wayne Pacelli from the Humane Society has been talking about this for a long time. People have been talking about this for a long time. And I believe it's very powerful and worth thinking about. Because if we're saying to representatives, we're not going to vote for you if you're voting to hurt animals. And I'm talking at a local level, state level, federal level. You can start right with your local. We are forming a political action committee here in the East Bay in Oakland to work with our city council to make sure that we pass animal-friendly legislation and that we don't pass animal-harmful legislation, and that we get in those seats in our city council those people who are focused on protecting animals in our city. Period. That can be done wherever you are. And yes, it takes money, but that's the reason people form PACs. That's the reason you see so many PACs, is because what it means is that we can support a candidate with money as a collective PAC, political action committee, that we couldn't do individually because of laws around caps for individuals donating to a campaign. So this stuff is, why shouldn't we do the same thing? Oh, because the NRA does it. No, like they're following the system that's there for us to follow. So that's why I called that particular blog post the National Rifle Association of Animal Rights, because I really want to get people's attention to really understand what this means. So ColleenPatrick-Goudreau.com/NRA is the quick URL. Bobby says Senator Rich Alloway, Republican from District 33, reintroduced a bill on February 2nd to strengthen the bite of animal cruelty laws in Pennsylvania. And he has lots of Senate support. And look up Libra's law. The bill had 24 Senate co-sponsors as of Monday. That's awesome. Wait, it sounds like this is a good thing, right? To strengthen the bite of animal cruelty laws. So anti-cruelty laws you're talking about, I'm assuming. Just wanted to clarify that, Bobby. Thanks, Katrina, for putting that up. And, well, you're welcome, Kirsten. Good. That's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. That is an example of everyone who's a constituent of his. If there are friends of yours who live nearby, neighbors, he should be getting thanked for that, supported for that. Find out when he's running again. Contribute to his campaign, send him a thank you letter, send him cookies, go to the office. You can walk into the state capitol. You can send him a gift. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that makes a difference. One thing people can do as well, there's a new thing, it's not new at all. If you don't want to form a political action committee, what you can do as well is show up, especially during campaign, especially during the campaign, especially during any campaign for any seat, is you can show up at a house party, and you can show up with an envelope of checks that people wrote to that campaign. Let's say you gathered 20 checks, $100 each, maybe not a lot, doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot when you're running, right? Try to get $500 each from people, whatever. You don't have to have formed a PAC to do this. You can get each person to write to that, to write a check to that person's campaign, and you can show up with that envelope full of checks, right? And you can say, hi, I am representing these 20, 30 people who care about reelecting you because of the bills that you put forth and the legislation that you passed that was animal friendly, and that's what we're looking for you to do. I mean, show up, have the conversation, have the meeting beforehand, and let them know that this is what's important to you. They're going to remember your face. They're going to remember your face. Don't underestimate that. Think about how you respond when someone does something that's out of the ordinary or that stands out against what everybody else is doing. So, this is basic human psychology. It's basic human ego. It's people wanting to hold on to their jobs, which is what these, members of Congress are doing. So it's all really, really important. So I want to hear from you. Use that page, that political action for animals page, to tell me what you're doing. Let me know what you're doing. Get on that page, converse with each other, give me your ideas, write things about that Republican and anti-cruelty laws in Libra, who was a horribly abused, Libra was a horribly abused dog. He was saved, rehabilitated, and adopted, and that's who Libra's law. That sounds familiar. That's beautiful. I want to see those things on that page. I want to see your ideas. I want to see your letters to the editor that you're writing. If you have questions, ask me. Create this community around this, and keep it on. And I'll just take Trayton's and we'll go. Trayton says, quick question for you, Colleen. I recently started volunteering at a local nature center as an animal caretaker. I love it. There are lots of animals like turtles and snakes and salamanders who eat bugs. Yeah, some of the animals are old and can't live feed. I have to cut up the bugs like roaches and worms. Oh my God, that's really hard. I think I know where you're going with this. Let me just read Jill's while I'm waiting for you to finish if you haven't already, Trayton. But Jill says, the idea of supporting any PACs is something you're helping me become more comfortable with lately. They've always held a negative connotation. It's true, isn't it? It's true, because when we think of PACs, we think of these super PACs, and that's a whole other conversation. That's about, corporations having the status of people. That's a whole other conversation, and there's some really smarmy things that are done that have really stretched what the idea of PACs were about. But it's the same thing I talk about. It's the same thing, I talked about this when I was giving the George Lakoff examples, is, you keep saying tax relief enough. It sounds like there's something wrong with taxes. When you look at the people who were doing, who are forming PACs, you think, oh, they're always the evil ones, then PACs must be evil. It's just guilt by association. And we need to change that. We need to change our thinking about it. And I'm really glad I could help you change your thinking about it. It's part of the system that we have. We have campaign finance laws that restrict the amount of money that individuals can give to a campaign. And so there are these political action committees that just basically say that several individuals can give to one cause, one group, and that strengthens our voice as a collection of people, collection as a collectively, and it's very effective. So look into doing it. We just sent our forms into the Secretary of State. I certainly will be fundraising for the PAC, of course, for here for locally, but this is something you can do wherever you are. People can give money to the PAC to become members, and one of the things that was going to be really helpful for the PAC, for us, and for you, is that we're going to be able to give you a voting record of the people in, at least in my district, of how they're voting on animal issues. Because especially locally, and this is one of the benefits too, locally, I don't know about you, but when it comes time to vote for things, it's like, I don't know the director of the East Bay Park System, like what their record is, like on animal issues. Are they pro-agriculture? Are they pro-wildlife? Like, I don't know. That's one of the things we're going to be able to parse out. So this stuff goes beyond just making contributions, but it is really important, because unfortunately money is in government, and we can be naive and we can say and be idealistic. I don't even mean naive, and I don't mean to sound negative about it, but idealism only gets us so far. We have a system that we can play in, and one of the things that Democrats and progressives, I prefer progressives and conservatives rather than Democrats and Republicans, because I think progressives and conservatives really speaks to the ideology, whereas Democrats and Republicans is really the party membership. I don't even consider, I'm actually registered as an independent, but my values are progressive, and I think it's helpful to talk about it in those ways. But one thing progressives haven't been very good at is playing by that as well. I'm going to say it one more time, and then I'm going to go. Please, right now, when you get off of this video, go wherever you buy books, go order George Lakoff's book, Don't Think of an Elephant. please go buy this book. It'll cost you $10. He's brilliant. He is getting a lot of traction for his messaging. It's so simple. You will understand rhetoric and the way the brain works and the language to use to express your values in a way that you've never thought about before. It's rocked my world. It's been informing so much of my own activism, and I have been I'm a person who's been focused on language in my whole career, and it will rock your world. So Don't Think of an Elephant by George Lakoff, and if someone could put that in the comments, including a link, that would be really fantastic. I think it's on my political action guide. It might be there. You can use that link and I'll get it's a little affiliate link. Anyway, so Trayton was just saying some of the animals are old and can't live feed. I have to cut up the bugs like roaches and worms and hand feed them. I just really think it's an ugly thing to do to the bugs, but other animals depend on me. Just looking for your insight. And Anne says, Trayton, it's like feeding your kitty or another animal that eats meat. I know. Margaret, are you asking for the name of the book again? George Lakoff, Please Don't Think of an Elephant. And if that's what you're asking me, Trayton, it's true what Anne is saying. It is, yeah, I mean, it really is difficult because, to be honest, I feed my cats other animals, aquatic animals, and it's coming out of a can. I tried many years ago to get, chicken breasts and that kind of thing and make it for my cats. It was very difficult for me to do. So there's clearly a cognitive dissonance that I'm participating in by getting canned food and feeding it to my cats. What you're participating in is direct killing. I mean, it's hard. It's like the cutting up of the animal. Like, that's really hard to do. And I don't begrudge you that. It's true in the sense that you are there, feeding the other animals. And, that's probably the only example of where you can literally say that it is the cycle of life. And that is the fact of the matter. Unlike with zoos where they are the animals, the lions that are fed other animals, zoos don't need to be around. But the nature center, it sounds like they're there. They've been rescued one way or the other. It's just hard. It's going to happen either way, whether you do it or not. But perhaps if you feel like it's not something you can do, perhaps you can say that maybe there's another job that you can do. But just knowing that it's still happening and it's a little unavoidable. Thank you for the Amazon link, Shannon. Krista said, Colleen, will you be at this year's Animal Rights Conference in D.C.? I don't know, Krista. I was just thinking today, I'm not really sure. That's an example of, I wonder if I should really decide what the best use of my time is in terms of spending the time going to the Animal Rights Conference. It's a lot of time, it's money, preparing for that, versus do I spend the time working on my own event here in September in Oakland, if I'm thinking that it would be September, maybe that's a better use of my time. So I'm not sure yet. I haven't heard from them directly. Michael Weberman is the person I always dealt with directly there, but he's not there anymore. So I'm not really sure. I think whatever I brought to the Animal Rights Conference would be valuable, especially in terms of communication and language. But I wonder if my time wouldn't be better spent focused on doing something that I'd be able to organize specifically around political action, animal, language, communication, and taking care of ourselves in a time like this. You're welcome, Trayton. Thanks, everybody, so much. So again, go buy George Lakoff's book, Don't Think of an Elephant. Go please download and subscribe to Animology, and please share it. There's lots of shareables all over my website, specifically called shareables. Go start writing your letters to the editor and get them over on that Political Action for Animals page. I want to see what you're doing. I want to read your letters. I want to hear what kind of response you're getting, and I want to know how you're feeling. Margaret says, I feel like we have best intentions towards all life, especially the vulnerable, which includes obviously all animals. We should do what we can practically. Indeed. And thank you, everybody. And Charlie thanks you. He's getting more comfortable, which means I can't get up. I can't get up. I'm stuck. My legs are atrophied. Luckily, I have a book I'm about to read for a little bit, and I've got whiskey within reach, so I might take advantage of that. Okay, all right, bye, everybody.